All right, so today we're really diving into some fascinating stuff with new directions in digital ethics. You've obviously been spending some time with this one.
Yeah, it's a really interesting take because
Yeah.
most of what's out there tries to I don't know, shoehorn these new technologies into
Yeah.
these old ethical frameworks.
Hmm.
Somebody's like, no.
Yeah, it's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. It's
Exactly.
like, guys, come on.
Like we're talking about
They've
a
got
whole different animal here.
completely different technologies.
yeah.
Our old rules were written for a world that ran on printing presses, not, supercomputers in our pockets.
Yeah, and they actually say that what purpose can it serve to insist upon applying the same values and norms to new technologies when appeals to these principles have not solved the problems created by the old technologies?
Yeah, they don't even let traditional ethics off the hook.
Right.
It's not even that those principles are irrelevant. It's that we need to hit the refresh button here.
Exactly. They're insufficient.
Yeah. Are they saying we should just toss out the old rule book then?
Well, no, they acknowledge the good that's come from things like, individual rights.
Okay.
But they're saying, look, those alone can't address the really unique ethical challenges that we have when we're talking about a society where
Yes.
everything is interconnected digitally.
Okay, so where do we even start with a new ethical framework then?
Well, they actually say we need to rethink what we even mean by digital.
Okay.
Like, get out of that device-centric thinking. It's really about information
Right.
that's constantly being constructed and reshaped within networks.
Networks. That's kind of the key word there, isn't it?
Networks are huge, yeah.
It's not just me and my phone. It's how we're all sort of
Interconnected.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And think of it like this.
Okay.
A school of fish.
Oh, okay.
Individually, they're pretty simple creatures.
Right.
But together, they create these incredibly intricate patterns that are shifting and changing all the time.
Right.
That's kind of how networks operate.
Yeah.
Simple elements, but together they create this complexity.
So they're saying the internet, with all of its social media and all of its, whatever it is like this constantly evolving school of fish.
Yes.
And that our old way of thinking about things just doesn't apply.
Exactly. And they use the word computation.
Okay.
And it's not just about computers. They're talking about how simple rules, when applied repeatedly, can lead to really complex and unpredictable outcomes.
And that's what we're seeing.
That's what we're seeing.
So we can't just, slap a new coat of paint on this thing. We need a whole new approach.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do they propose?
So they actually introduce 6 core values that they think are essential for a networked society.
6 core values.
Yeah, and these are interesting.
All right, I'm listening. 6 core values. All right, lay it on me. That's number 1.
So the first one is connectivity, and it's not just about being online, right? It's recognizing that in this networked world, being more connected actually makes things more resilient, more real.
Okay, so that kind of turns the idea of privacy and security on its head a little bit.
It does. It's like, that old saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. More links, even with varying strengths, actually create a stronger overall structure.
Okay, so more connections equals a stronger network.
Exactly.
All right, that's a big shift in thinking for a lot of people, I think. What's next?
Okay, number 2 is flow.
Flow.
So in this digital world, information's always moving, always changing. And they're saying we need to embrace that flow, even with all of its volatility, uncertainty.
So instead of trying to nail this thing down, we just got to learn to ride the wave.
Yeah, be the surfer, not the homeowner on the beach.
Exactly.
They actually use the acronym VUCA.
VUCA.
Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
VUCA.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds intense.
Right.
But also kind of exciting, like we're on the edge of something totally new.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so we got connectivity, we got flow. What's number 3?
Number 3 is participation.
Participation.
Okay.
And this one's huge because it really gets to how this new ethical framework kind of disrupts those old power structures. Yeah.
Right.
It's recognizing that everybody in the network has agency. They can impact it.
So it's not just about having a voice. It's about that voice actually carrying some weight.
Exactly. And this challenges those old top-down models. It makes us think differently about responsibility. We can't just rely on a select few to make all the ethical calls.
Right, because our actions have an impact on the entire network.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're seeing these values build on each other here.
Yeah.
Connectivity, flow, participation. It's all about embracing the interconnectedness of everything. What's next?
All right, number 4 is transparency.
Transparency.
And they don't just mean governments and companies being more open. They're talking about a radical level of openness. So no more secrets online.
Well, it's not about eliminating privacy entirely. It's more
Mhm.
about recognizing that in a system that relies on trust, hiding information becomes a problem.
Okay, so it's about rethinking privacy, not necessarily getting rid of it altogether.
Exactly.
All right, that makes sense. So we've got connectivity flow, participation, transparency. What's number 5?
Number 5 is authenticity.
Authenticity. So
Yeah.
being genuine, being real, especially online.
Exactly, because in a network, you can't have that trust if everybody's hiding behind fake identities.
And we see how damaging that can be. I mean, look at all the issues with like catfishing and fake news and
Exactly. And the authors are saying that kind of deception just wouldn't fly in a true network society. If we want the benefits, we have to be willing to show up authentically.
it's like that saying, honesty is the best policy, but applied to the digital world. Okay, we're on the home stretch here. What's the final core value?
Okay, number 6, flexibility.
Flexibility. Well, the world certainly moves fast enough these days.
Right. But it's more than just keeping up. It's about designing systems that can actually evolve and adapt, along with the network itself.
So less about maintaining the status quo, more about embracing the ever-changing nature of things.
Precisely. They see adaptability and what they call design thinking as super crucial skills moving forward.
Okay, so we've got connectivity flow, participation, transparency, authenticity, and flexibility. That's a lot to digest. You know, I'm starting to wrap my head around these values, but how do they expect us to actually put them into practice in our lives?
Right. That's where things get really interesting. They offer a practical framework for that. They call it the principles of network governance.
Network governance. Okay, that sounds kind of big and official. So what's involved there? How do we actually do that?
Well, they break it down into 5 principles that
Mhm.
kind of build on those core values we were just talking about.
Okay,
The
sure.
first one they call taking account of.
Taking account of.
Yeah, it sounds simple, right?
Okay.
But it's really about recognizing how interconnected everything is. You know, making sure our decisions aren't made in a vacuum, like really understanding how our digital actions have these ripple effects outward.
So, like, before you hit send on that email or post that comment, take a moment to consider the wider impact.
Exactly. It's like empathy, but supercharged.
I like it. What's the next principle?
The second one builds on that. It's producing stakeholders.
Producing stakeholders. So, not just identifying who's already at the table, but actually bringing more people into the fold.
You got it. Because in a networked society, power isn't about holding on tight. It's about empowering others. It's about recognizing that everyone affected by a decision should have a say in how it's made.
That's a very different way of thinking about power.
Very cool. Okay, what else we got?
All right, number 3 is prioritizing, instituting, excluding.
Whoa, hold on. That's a mouthful.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but it basically means recognizing that we can't do it all, right?
Yeah.
We got to make choices.
Prioritize.
Exactly. Even tough choices about what matters most at any given moment.
And do they say how we're supposed to decide what takes priority?
Well, that's where those open conversations come in, right? Talking
Yeah.
about our values, figuring out what we're willing to prioritize together, even if it means saying no to other things. Okay, so it's about making conscious choices collectively and transparently. I can get behind that. What's the next principle?
This one's interesting. It's localizing and globalizing.
Wait, how do you do both of those at the same time?
Right. It's like this. We need to remember that even our smallest actions online can have these huge ripple effects across the network, right?
Mhm.
So we got to be aware of that global context, even as we're making decisions on a local level. Think globally, act locally, but, digitally.
Okay, so think big picture, but act locally.
Gotcha.
All right. Last principle. What is it?
This one might sound a bit more familiar. It's separating powers.
Okay. Like checks and balances.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about making sure no one entity has too much control over the network.
No kings of the internet.
Exactly. Got to
Yeah.
keep that balance of power, make sure no one voice drowns out all the others.
This whole network governance thing, it's really making me rethink how we approach ethics in this digital age. It's a challenge for sure, but honestly, I think it's a much more hopeful vision than just trying to force fit old rules onto this new reality.
I completely agree. It's not about going back. It's about moving forward.
Exactly. And to our listeners out there, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on all of this? How do you see these core values and principles playing out in your own digital life? Head over to our website or find us on that constantly evolving network we call the internet, and let's keep this conversation going.